Having just moved to the small town, he rolls up his sleeves to repair his house himself, even dragging a newly acquainted friend over to act as free labor. While the two are working in full swing, his phone rings, and his expression instantly changes upon answering, because his daughter has encountered an incident at school. Left with no choice, this man named Phil has to leave the house chores to his new friend to continue, while he hastily drives his pickup truck towards the school. At the door of the school infirmary, he spots a boy having a nose wound treated, while in another room, the boy's mother is incessantly throwing a furious tantrum. Teacher Susan leads Phil to the classroom where his daughter Maddie is waiting for him, and Phil sits beside his daughter, asking what exactly happened. It turns out that during recess, Maddie, who was playing alone, was blocked by Teddy and his gang. Seeing that Maddie is the new kid, Teddy snatches her baseball cap, shoves her to the ground, and relentlessly mocks her, just wanting to see her break down for his own amusement. However, he never expected that he messed with the wrong person this time, as this girl is not someone who can be easily bullied, and Maddie knocked Teddy to the ground in just a couple of moves. This is the entire sequence of events. Phil feels that his daughter is not at fault at all, since she was merely protecting herself. Finding this father-daughter duo quite unique, Susan chats with Phil privately to understand the situation, only to discover that Phil's wife passed away a year ago. To comfort his daughter, Phil brought her to move to his late wife's hometown, which is this very small town. As the father and daughter arrive at the parking lot to leave the school, they coincidentally bump into Teddy's family, who are also getting ready to leave. Upon seeing Phil, Teddy's mother Cassie is furious, constantly spewing harsh words and even egging on her husband Jimmy to step up and give Phil a hard time. Left with no alternative, Jimmy angrily storms over to Phil, who, not wanting to deal with such people, turns around and tells his daughter to get in the car first. Unexpectedly, Jimmy makes a physical move at this moment.
Jimmy, stop! Take him down! Whoa! Hey! Arrest him! Get over here! Back off!
But Phil takes him down in a single round. Jimmy is escorted back to his car by Sheriff Rodrigue, who was standing nearby and witnessed the whole thing unfold, knowing that Phil is not to blame, since Jimmy was the one who initiated the altercation. However, seeing that this unfamiliar face has caused trouble right after appearing in the small town, the sheriff still advises Phil not to be too flashy on his turf. Phil also realizes that his sudden move just now was too impulsive, as the school teachers were all watching from a distance. Just as a helpless Phil is about to leave, he catches Cassie casting a venomous glare his way, seemingly telling him that this matter is far from over. Sure enough, on the ride back, Cassie incessantly complains that her husband lost face in public and is a total coward. With her son beaten and her husband humiliated, she feels she absolutely must vent this nasty anger, bringing her dangerous brother to mind. Upon hearing that Cassie wants to seek out her brother, Jimmy immediately advises her that there is no need to do so, considering her brother is no saint, but Cassie insists on having her own way. A heavily bearded man drives back home late at night, only to immediately lay eyes on the person he least wants to see, his biological sister. He knows that nothing good ever comes from his sister's visits, and sure enough, this time she wants his help to teach the new man in town a lesson. Besides this matter, every time his sister drops by, she always asks him for some contraband. Gator actually doesn't want his sister touching these things anymore, but he caves under her pitiful begging. Meanwhile, Phil is completely unaware of the dark undercurrents surging through the small town, having moved to this remote area with his daughter merely to live a quiet and peaceful rural life. One day, he goes to the local gas station to refuel, and just as he inserts the nozzle into his tank, a truck also pulls into the station. Through his rearview mirror, Phil sees two ferocious-looking thugs step out of the vehicle, and it is glaringly obvious that these two are coming straight for him. One of them deliberately picks a fight with Phil by straight up turning off the machine he is using to pump gas. Understanding that these two are intentionally looking for trouble, Phil suppresses his anger in the spirit of avoiding unnecessary drama and tries to reason with them properly.
Whatever you're thinking, we think it.
However, his display is perceived by the thugs as weakness and cowardice, making them act even more arrogantly. Seeing Phil try to turn on the gas pump, the thug blocks him and doesn't let him move. Seeing that the situation was not right, the frightened gas station owner hid inside the store and didn't dare to get involved. But Phil doesn't care about all that. For him, he has already taken all the necessary steps of tolerance, and taking any more crap is simply not in his nature.
Why don't we step around the side of the building?
so I can kick your fucking ass up over your shoulders.
Phil made quick work of the two thugs. He interrogates one of the men to find out who sent them, but the man remains stubborn and refuses to spill anything. Left with no other option, Phil can only leave the gas station. Having caused such a massive scene in the small town, it is impossible for him to go unnoticed. While picking up his daughter from school to head home, Phil is signaled to pull over by Sheriff Rodrigue's patrol car on the road. Rodrigue is also dealing with a major headache, as he had just told this new resident to keep a low profile, yet the man managed to stir up a brawl today. Unsure of the exact background and identity of the man standing before him, Rodrigue deduces from his impressive combat skills and strong sense of justice that Phil used to be either special forces or a cop.
Need to know information. And maybe some people don't need to know.
Listening to Phil's ambiguous responses, Rodrigue pretty much has his answer in mind. However, he repeats his previous warning, stating that no matter who Phil is, he had better keep his nose clean. Phil takes his daughter back to their little home in the woods. He has no idea that not far away, a man is coldly and closely monitoring his every move. This uninvited guest is none other than Gator. It turns out that the two men who looked for trouble with Phil at the gas station today are actually his lackeys. The gang led by Gator throws their weight around this small town, and nobody dares to step in. He originally thought having his boys beat Phil up would be the end of it, but he never expected to hit a brick wall today. Consequently, Gator quietly tracks down Phil's house, wanting to see for himself exactly who this man really is. Waiting until Phil and his daughter ride their horses into the woods, Gator initiates his move. He first slashes the tires of Phil's pickup truck with a knife, and then he breaks into the house, rummaging everywhere in hopes of finding clues that will reveal the man's true background. He finds a stuffed animal in the bedroom of Phil's daughter Maddie, and then he takes the toy away. Next, he heads down to the basement, where several large boxes of file folders are stored. Gator digs through various documents and materials, eventually discovering something massive inside regarding the unknown, mysterious past of this man named Phil. Several years ago, Phil still rocked long hair and served as the second in command in a Boston outlaw motorcycle gang called the Outcasts. On this particular day, he follows the boss to a secret warehouse, which turns out to be the gang's manufacturing lab. Meanwhile, the outside of the building has already been quietly surrounded by police. A massive swarm of cops suddenly raids the factory, and when a gang member tries to shoot at the police, he is instantly slammed to the ground by Phil. It turns out that he is an undercover DEA agent. The gang boss, Danny T, only now realizes Phil's true identity, and in a fit of rage, he fires at Phil while retreating with his son Jojo. As a massive explosion suddenly rips through the factory, Danny T and his son hijack a car, smashing through the wooden barricade and making their getaway. How could Phil possibly let the target he spent years tracking undercover just slip away like this? He hastily hops onto a motorcycle in hot pursuit, but the road ahead has already been blocked off by heavily armed police. Left with no choice, Danny T is forced to pull a U-turn and drive back, but Phil has already caught up by this time. The car explodes, bursting into flames and coming to a halt on the side of the road. Phil rushes forward and drags Danny T out of the wreckage, while Jojo opens the car door and steps out. With several police cruisers already closing in from both sides of the road, Danny T and his son are completely trapped like rats in a barrel. Not wanting to take Jojo's life, Phil orders him to drop his handgun. Seeing that Jojo refuses to listen, Phil fires a shot and hits him right in the knee. At this moment, a large number of police officers are nervously aiming their guns at Jojo. He then makes a sudden movement to reach for something inside his jacket, and in a split second, countless gunshots ring out. Phil watches the scene unfold in absolute disbelief. Beside him, Danny T viciously curses Phil, screaming that he ended his son's life and swearing that he will absolutely get his bloody revenge. But Phil knows deep down that he clearly just wanted to save the kid's life. With nowhere to vent his intense frustration, Phil walks away without looking back, resigning from his job as a DEA agent to live the life of a normal guy. Following the passing of his wife, in order to honor her memory and to protect his daughter from being hunted by the gang, he changed his identity and settled into this remote small town. All of Phil's secret past experiences are read loud and clear by Gator. Upon learning that Phil is actually the sworn enemy of Danny T from the Outcasts gang, a thrilling smile creeps onto his face. This is because a bold and completely crazy plan has already formed in his mind. On the other side, Phil's daughter Maddie tells him that her favorite stuffed animal and her little cat have both gone missing. Phil can only coax his precious daughter into bed, promising that he will find them both for her. So, he grabs a flashlight and starts searching all around the perimeter of the house. As a result, he discovers that his car tires have been intentionally slashed by someone unknown. And in the woods, he also finds the torn stuffed animal violently nailed to a tree trunk. All these signs tell him that someone specifically sneaked into his home and messed with his property. This is a warning, and even more so, a blatant threat. That night, Phil suffers from insomnia, his mind weighed down with heavy, dark worries. It seems this seemingly peaceful land is not too safe either, and he wonders how he should protect his daughter and his sanctuary. Gator calls over his long-separated ex-girlfriend Cheryl, and after a passionate session, Gator finally gets down to business with her. He hands Phil's secret file over to Cheryl for her to review. It turns out that Cheryl was actually a member of the Outcasts gang many years ago. Gator has already secretly manufactured a massive amount of contraband, and no longer satisfied with playing small in the town, he wants Cheryl to leak the information about Phil hiding out here to the imprisoned Danny T in exchange for a larger distribution channel. However, Cheryl knows the ruthless modus operandi of the Outcasts gang all too well, and dealing with them is practically asking for trouble. But Gator refuses to listen at this point, having already locked onto Phil as his ultimate cash cow, and he insists on pulling off this dangerous deal. Since his daughter's stuffed animal was ruined, Phil buys a brand new one to give to her. He also decides to throw a birthday party for his daughter right at home. While dropping Maddie off at school, he takes the initiative to greet Cassie, wanting to invite her and her son to attend Maddie's birthday party as well. The proactive goodwill from Phil and his daughter finally improves Cassie's bitter mood a bit. After going through all these events, Phil has finally learned to lower his ego and truly get along with the town's locals. After returning home, he continues repairing the house with his good friend Tito. Upon hearing that Phil's house was secretly broken into yesterday, Tito, a longtime resident of the town, instantly knows that it must have been the local kingpin, Gator. He also reveals Gator's address, which is an abandoned boatyard located right by the river. He repeatedly warns Phil that it's best to avoid dealing with Gator, because that man is extremely dangerous. Meanwhile, the Outcasts bikers ride massively down the highway, and this intimidating crew enters a roadside diner where Cheryl is waiting anxiously and nervously. The current head of the gang is named Cyrus, who is temporarily managing the Outcasts organization in place of Danny T. He comes specifically for Cheryl's meeting because he heard this woman has something highly important to trade with him. But Cyrus has absolutely no intention of making a deal with Cheryl. In his eyes, Cheryl and the man behind her are mere punks who are completely unqualified to negotiate terms with him, and he only wants to know exactly where Phil is. On the other side, Phil's internal gut feeling is getting worse and worse, and the results of the background check on Gator, which he requested from his old DEA boss, have finally come in. His former boss has found out that Gator has an Outcast's girlfriend named Cheryl, and recently, members of the Outcasts have already been active near the small town. It looks like this ruthless crew is already starting to target him. After hanging up the phone, Phil goes to his daughter's room, and looking at the precious girl who relies entirely on him, he doesn't know if he can keep her safe, but he absolutely must get it done. Regardless of whether the other side is targeting him, Phil feels he needs to take the initiative and strike first. The very next day, following the exact address given by Tito, he locates the breakfast diner that Gator frequents. Sure enough, he runs into Gator and Cheryl right here. Gator never expected Phil to come knocking directly at his door, marking the first time the two men formally face off. However, Gator is not afraid of Phil in the slightest, instead opting to mock and ridicule him coldly. Sitting right next to him, Cheryl lacks his strong psychological endurance, constantly biting her fingernails to mask her intense nervousness and guilty conscience. Phil doesn't beat around the bush with this sinister man, directly pointing out that Gator had been to his house. He warns Gator that if he dares to harass his home again, he shouldn't blame him for getting nasty. Just as he turns around to leave, the defiant Gator completely pushes back and challenges him.
Hey, you should tell your little girl to be brave. She's got nothing to worry about with such a tough daddy around.
Phil absolutely cannot stand anyone threatening him with his daughter, but in order to allow himself and his little girl to live peacefully here, he ultimately forces back his blazing anger. However, stepping out of the diner, Phil feels that Gator won't actually heed his warning, so he decides to go check out Gator's lair for himself. He arrives at Gator's house, situated by the river, inspecting the situation everywhere. He heads into the old boatyard, and after a quick sweep, he spots something off behind a few metal barrels. Pulling open the corrugated iron wall behind the barrels, he is surprised to find a whole other world hidden back there. It turns out that this place hides Gator's very own manufacturing lab. Phil opens the freezer and discovers the illegal contraband inside. Looking at these sinful items, a plan forms in Phil's mind, and he decides to rig a booby trap right in Gator's home base. He modifies the already complicated electrical wiring here, then unscrews all the light bulbs, drills holes in them to inject gasoline, and installs them right back. Then he places all the gasoline cans directly on the tabletop. In just a few moments, he transforms this place into a highly explosive and combustible death trap. Just as he retreats back outside the way he came, he suddenly hears the meow of a cat. He cautiously walks over to check it out, and sure enough, he finds his family's missing little cat. This further solidifies the absolute fact that Gator had been to his house. But right at this moment, a gun is suddenly pressed hard against the top of his head.
Get up real slow.
Phil strikes by surprise and knocks the enemy down, but the frightened kitten runs off to the corner. He has just walked over and scooped up the kitten.
Gotcha. Hey, broker.
Phil gets grabbed by two of Gator's lackeys. Enemies see red when they meet, and these two men who were previously beaten to a pulp by Phil will not let him off easily, ruthlessly torturing and beating him to vent the raging anger in their hearts. The man, having finally caught a break and seeing Phil as meat on his chopping block, starts to let his guard down, continuously spitting mocking words at Phil. Phil, with his hands bound tight, kicks down three men, but he still desperately needs to free his hands from the restraints. While kicking back the attacking enemies, he manages to turn on the cutting machine. He finally severs the bindings on his wrists, and now he is completely ready to unleash a massacre. He tracks down the man who fell into the river, continuing the harsh words he never finished saying. Phil returns home carrying his daughter's little cat. Already sensing that something massive is about to go down, he packs his daughter's luggage, planning to send her over to Susan's place for a temporary stay first thing tomorrow morning. Moreover, he calls over his good buddy Tito, asking him to help look after his horses for a few days. Because he predicts that his home is about to turn into an absolute war zone, he must put all of his precious ties in a safe place. Phil's premonition is entirely correct, but he severely miscalculates the timing. Because the Outcasts gang simply cannot wait any longer, Danny T orders Cyrus to make the hit tonight. A massive crew arrives at Gator's house, and seeing so many vicious-looking thugs show up, Gator instantly cowers in fear. Not daring to breathe a single word about expanding his distribution channels, he directly hands Phil's home address over to Cyrus. Cyrus is certainly no saint either, and to prevent Gator from pulling any tricks, he forcibly drags Cheryl along for the ride. The gang boards speedboats, tearing through the water at lightning speed straight toward Phil's house. Tonight is absolutely destined to be a restless, bloody night. Meanwhile, inside the stable, Tito, who is preparing to load the horses, suddenly hears what sounds like movement outside. Sure enough, a hitman holding a gun slowly steps into the stable, carefully searching every corner. Tito suddenly charges out, catching the hitman completely off guard with a surprise attack. Initially relying on his large physique to gain the upper hand, he soon proves no match for the hitman, who shoves him into a horse stall and pins him down, raining relentless blows upon him. The highly skilled hitman beats Tito until he is lying flat on the ground, his face completely covered in blood. Just as the hitman turns around to grab his gun and finish Tito off, Tito grabs a pitchfork and viciously impales it right into the hitman's body. Having taken out the enemy, Tito runs over to his truck and leans on the horn, blasting a warning signal to Phil inside the house. Hearing the gunshots outside, Phil instantly kills all the lights in the house. He leads his daughter Maddie to the basement stairs, handing her a cell phone to hide with and urgently telling her to dial the police. At this moment outside the house, Cyrus, wielding an MP9 submachine gun, has already arrived at the front of the property with his massive crew. Returning to his room, Phil pulls out his long hidden weapon case and selects a treasured Benelli M4 Super 90 shotgun. Hiding behind the curtains to observe the situation outside, he discovers that the hitmen have already rapidly surrounded the entire house. Down in the basement, Maddie hides just inches away from a hitman, so terrified she doesn't even dare to breathe. After setting up the encirclement, Cyrus orders 2 of his men to take the vanguard. The 2 hitmen, guns drawn, slowly inch their way toward the main entrance. Maddie's sudden scream attracts the hitman outside the fence, completely exposing her hiding spot. Seeing that someone is chasing his daughter in the basement, Phil grabs a corpse and rolls right down the stairs. He then wields his Super 90 shotgun and blasts 2 immediate rounds right at the enemy. Knowing full well that Maddie is Phil's weakness, Cyrus quickly orders another hitman to chase her down while he pins Phil down with submachine gun fire. Seeing the enemy's heavy firepower, Phil also scoops up a submachine gun from the ground to fiercely return fire at Cyrus. He lands a precision shot right in the face of one hitman, then hastily chases into the woods as well. Meanwhile, Maddie is sprinting desperately for her life with the hitman in hot pursuit until he suddenly stops, raising his gun to take aim and shoot. Phil arrives just in time, instantly killing the hitman with a single shot. Seeing his daughter safe and sound, he barely lets out a sigh of relief before Cyrus violently tackles him to the ground. Phil tells his daughter to run away quickly while he stays behind to deal with the enemy. Maddie runs all the way to the riverside dock, and Cheryl, who has been staying on the boat, spots her at this moment. The panic-stricken Maddie sees a woman and sees her as a lifeline, running to Cheryl's side while constantly calling for help. Knowing that she is Phil's daughter, Cheryl pulls Maddie onto the boat. Only at this moment does Maddie sense that there is something off about this woman. Meanwhile, Phil and Cyrus are locked in a life-or-death struggle, throwing heavy punches and engaging in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Cyrus wraps his legs tightly around Phil's neck, attempting to choke him to death. At the same time, Maddie tries to break free from Cheryl's grasp, constantly screaming for her dad to save her. Hearing his daughter's cries, Phil erupts with astonishing strength, hoisting Cyrus's entire body and slamming him heavily onto the ground. Cyrus pulls out a dagger, wanting to stab his formidable opponent to death. Phil seizes the perfect opportunity, grabbing Cyrus by the throat and ultimately snapping his opponent's arm. After taking out the enemy, Phil runs to the riverbank, but he is one step too late, watching a woman shove his daughter into the cabin and speed away in a speedboat. Phil runs back to the house, and by this time, the police cruisers have already arrived. Phil quickly recounts everything that happened at his home to Rodrigue, telling him that his daughter has been snatched away, but he didn't get a clear look at the woman's face and doesn't know who she is. Just as he is burning with anxiety, his phone rings, and it's a call from Maddie. He tells his daughter to continuously describe everything she is seeing. By this time, Cheryl's boat has already docked at the shore. Upon hearing his daughter say she has entered a warehouse, Phil instantly knows exactly where she is. Without a second thought, he directly hijacks a police cruiser and speeds off, heading to the old boatyard to rescue his daughter. Meanwhile, Gator is not at home, and having been completely played by Cyrus, he not only failed to expand his distribution channels, but also gave away Phil's address for absolutely nothing. Driving back to the old boatyard in a drunken stupor, he discovers that Cheryl has already returned. What shocks him even more is that this woman actually brought Phil's daughter back with her. This absolutely drives Gator crazy, as he has no idea what this mad woman was thinking, practically drawing all the fatal trouble right onto himself. He must eliminate this little girl, because she is an eyewitness who proves his involvement in the whole mess, and he has to silence her permanently. Just then, a beam of headlights hits Gator. It turns out that Cassie heard gunshots and police sirens coming from Phil's house by the lake while at home, and knowing something huge happened, she suspects it is her brother's doing. Just as she is questioning Gator about his involvement in the matter, she suddenly hears a girl's crying and screaming coming from inside the boatyard. She hurries over to check out the situation, only to see that the girl in Cheryl's arms is exactly her son's female classmate. Wanting to get a clear look at what exactly is going on, she pulls the nearby electrical light switch. Unexpectedly, this action triggers the booby trap Phil had set up earlier, causing the entire boatyard to explode and turn into a massive sea of fire. Watching this sudden turn of events and seeing everything he owns reduced to ashes, Gator's mind instantly goes blank, leaving him standing there completely dumbfounded. Blaming all of this entirely on Phil, he tries to drag Maddie away, but Cassie fiercely refuses to let him. She gets into a heated argument with Gator, and during their intense scuffle, a gunshot rings out. Gator accidentally shoots his own sister. Caring about nothing else at this point, he drags Maddie along and gets right into his car. He shoots one final, furious glare at Cheryl, his eyes filled with sheer hatred and bitter resentment. However, he spares Cheryl's life and drives off by himself. By this time, Phil has already arrived at the blazing boatyard in the police cruiser, and catching sight of Gator trying to drive away, he quickly whips his car around to pursue him. The two vehicles tear down the road, with Gator driving frantically out of town in a desperate run for his life. Rodrigue spots Gator's car at this moment and immediately orders his men to close the drawbridge, cutting off his escape route. Having completely turned into a desperate fugitive, Gator throws caution to the wind and charges straight onto the drawbridge. As the drawbridge begins to slowly rotate, Phil also catches up, violently crashing his vehicle right into the railing and violently rolling onto the bridge deck. On this sealed-off bridge deck, only these two cars and 3 people remain. Fighting like a cornered beast, Gator grips his gun and slowly walks toward the flipped police cruiser. He has only one thought on his mind right now, and that is to kill the man who caused him to lose absolutely everything. Maddie constantly screams out for Phil from behind him, crying and begging Gator not to hurt her daddy.
Get back in the car right now!
Phil finally takes down this man who dared to point a gun at his daughter, but his blazing fury doesn't dissipate. Instead, it burns even fiercer, as his constant tolerance and polite reasoning only resulted in this absolute nightmare. This man almost destroyed his home and came incredibly close to murdering his most precious baby girl. Phil pulls out his gun and presses it right against Gator's forehead, but just as he is about to pull the trigger, he sees Maddie standing nearby staring at him, and his daughter's gaze shatters his heart. His rage instantly evaporates, realizing he doesn't want to be the bad guy who commits murder right in front of his daughter. He drops Gator and tightly embraces his daughter, who runs into his arms. All of this chaotic conflict has finally come to an end. Phil takes his daughter home, knowing that there is surely a place in this world where they can find a peaceful life together. But before that, there is still one last piece of business he needs to take care of. Danny T arrives at the prison visitation room because someone requested to see him today, only to end up looking at the very person he least wants to see.
See you on the outside, Danny. I'll be waiting.